This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at E3 Expo. I'm at Sony's exhibit, and to my immediate right is Tim Jones, who's head of creative for Rebellion. Welcome to the program, Tim.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Now, what do we have on display?
What we're displaying here, this is our reboot of Battlezone. Battlezone was an Atari video game from 1980, long time ago. Many people consider it the first VR game. It's about virtual fighting tanks, and this is our reboot of it for the 21st century, and we're demonstrating it here on Sony Morpheus in genuine virtual reality.
Clearly there's a few more pixels on the screen than I remember. What type of enhancements have you made to the game? And maybe I should rephrase that. What have you done to make the game so much better than it was when it, like 30 years ago?
Well, obviously we have considerably more technological power at our disposal these days. But one of the key things we've got is the Morpheus headset, the VR headset, so you can fully look around in 3D. Like, you turn your head, you can see to the left, to the right, even behind you. You can see the cockpit of the tank that you're in. You can lean forward, get really up close and personal to all the instruments and dials. You can see that we've got actual text running up and down the screens in there, and with the controller, we've got a really nice sort of fluid, intuitive movement to the tank, which is, it's a lot more maneuverable than the one in the original game, which is a bit more suited to the more modern gamer, I think, perhaps.
I played this earlier. A lot of fun. I mean, I just can't tell you how much fun I can, but it was really a lot of fun. So how is there kind of a story to this, or you just jump in and start blowing things up? How would you describe it?
Well, kind of in common with the old school 1980s arcade games that tended to have a very brief kind of scenario given in a couple of lines of text at the beginning of the game. We've got a bit more to it to that, but ultimately you're fighting the evil Rotberg Corporation, named after the original designer of the original Battlezone game, and they're taking over the world, mining it for resources, turning everything into computerized digital form, and you're infiltrating and trying to take it back for the human race. Yeah, that's the scenario. And yeah, ultimately it comes down to shooting a lot of tanks and other vehicles and using some awesome weaponry in the most awesome virtual tank ever designed.
Have you been looking at some multiplayer options with this as well?
We've been looking at all options, and we haven't confirmed anything at the moment. But I think it's fair to say that it's certainly a very appealing thing to think about with the kind of tank combat we've got here, and how immersive it is. It's certainly something we're excited to be looking at.
Now, this game, I mean, obviously we're seeing it on Morpheus. Was it designed from the ground up to be in virtual reality above all else, or is it intended for other solutions as well? And when I say other solutions, I mean like traditional gaming.
Well, when we conceived of it, basically, we bought the Battlezone license from Atari a couple of years ago when they were selling it off, and it's dear to our hearts as developers. It's a piece of gaming history, so it meant a lot to us, and we were super excited to get a hold of it. And it seemed like virtual reality is a natural home for it. That was immediately our first thought when we thought about bringing it to life again for a new generation of gamers. And we're looking at all options. Obviously it works beautifully in virtual reality and VR, but we're not ruling anything out at the moment. We're certainly looking at other ways of bringing it to gamers as well.
Now, you obviously, I mean, if memory, it's about 30 years old, maybe older. Did you have a...
Years, maybe? I think 35, yeah.
Maybe I should stop saying that, because I feel older and older every time I do. Did you have a bit of a learning curve to make it work in virtual reality as it is? Did you have a lot of experimentation before you got it to this phase?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's a very different discipline. Over the years of development in movies and games, we've as creatives, learn all sorts of tricks to make things feel more visceral and real and immediate on a 2D screen, whether it's a cinema screen or a computer monitor or a TV. Adding things like camera shake when explosions go off, and moving the camera around and doing all sorts of extreme effects to make people feel stuff that's actually quite separate from them. And we've actually had to kind of unlearn a lot of those tricks because they actually make people feel really uncomfortable when you put them in a VR world and they're actually like there looking around and it's like their eyes and head that's controlling the camera. As soon as you start taking that control away, even with a camera shake or something, it makes people feel very kind of uncomfortable, sometimes in quite an extreme way. So we've kind of stripping a lot of that back, making sure the camera's always in control of the player's eyes, their head, and their body, and anything we do around that, we actually, it doesn't take much to make a really intense experience, even, well, I mean, as you've experienced, like we put you in a cockpit there, and then you can kind of put your nose up to the consoles and go like, oh, look at that switch in the corner and that blinking light, and suddenly it becomes so much more fascinating and intense. And when you kind of imagine, okay, that's cool, and you start having tanks blowing up in front of you as well, that's a whole other level of like intense. And so yeah, we have to be very careful about how much we throw at the player. But I think it seems we've found a pretty good sweet spot. I mean, it's definitely a very intense experience. But I don't know, what did you think?
As I said, I thought it was amazing. I really had a good time. I've seen my fair share, and it's a simple concept. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's a simple concept, but clearly, it works. Would you? Clearly you're a tenured game developer. I'm sure you've been at this for some time. You did a lot of work, obviously experimentation to make this work in virtual reality. You made it look very easy with this. Do you think there's a lot more to learn still in VR?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, there's always, whether it's VR or games in general, there is always something to learn. I mean, it'd be a sad day if there wasn't anything more to learn. That's part of what excites me, and I think excites most of the people I work with about games and the whole area of like interactive entertainment, is that it's constantly moving as technology moves forward. The things we can do, the expectations of the audience, like whether you go hyper realistic or like we've been able to do here, go kind of very stylized, like it's like an old 80s vision of what the future might look like in a virtual world, and we very deliberately kind of pared it down. It's constantly exciting, and and VR itself it does feel like kind of a brave new world that's like finally happening, that it's we're actually putting you right in there instead of like having you looking at a screen. And it's definitely a paradigm shift, and a very exciting one.
Very exciting stuff. And one more question for you. I mean, of course, we're in Sony's exhibit. You're showing it on Morpheus. Will we see Battlezone on additional platforms?
Well, we've confirmed it for Steam, and we've confirmed it for Morpheus. As for other platforms, we're looking at our options and we're experimenting, but we haven't confirmed anything just yet.
Will this be available at launch time for Morpheus?
Again, I can't give you any definite answer to that. I mean, we're still awaiting to hear exactly when Morpheus comes out as well. But watch this space.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at E3 Expo. We will, of course, be back with more. Thank you for watching.